إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد.
What's the subject matter of the oath? What is so important that Allah needed or wanted to give an oath about? What is it so important that He wanted to draw our attention to look into? إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. The subject matter of the oath is that everyone is at a loss. Allah is given an oath on Al Asr that man is at a loss. Mankind is at a loss. What's the relationship between choosing Al Asr to give an oath by and the fact that everyone is at a loss? Why didn't He give an oath, for example, by one of His many other creations? Right here in this surah. Asr is your life. It's the token of time. And how you use Asr, your time, is a determining factor if you will be among the winners or among the losers. So it best coincides that time be what Allah uses to give an oath by, and Allah makes the best of all choices. Innal insana. Insana, mankind. If you're mankind, this applies to you. Insan is all mankind. There's a dispute. Some said it's the kafir, some said it's all mankind, and it's probably more correct to leave the Quranic verses general like in this one if there's no proof to restrict it, and that was the opinion that Ash-Shanqiti went by. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Lafi. Lam in lafi is to confirm. We talked about that last week. Khusr. Khusr comes in a noun form. Loss. Instead of a verb. Khusr comes as a noun instead of a verb to give an everlasting, powerful meaning. Allah did not say khasar. He's losing. Allah did not say laqad khasar. He's losing. Allah said khusr in a noun form. Khusr in a noun form. Let me give you an example to better understand how delicate the linguistic words of the Quran were chosen. One can be a millionaire and he loses $1,000. He's a khasir. He is a millionaire. What's $1,000 to a millionaire? He's a khasir, but he's not a total loser because what's $1,000 really nothing, even though he lost, but it's really nothing for a millionaire. Now, if a millionaire, that same millionaire lost billions, now he's in debt, now he's encircled with loss, then the term khusr, complete loss, applies to him. Tremendous loss. He's no longer a khasir. He's in khusr. He's encircled in loss. Khusr means complete, total loser, complete, total loss. Encompassed, seized totally by loss, encircled by loss, at loss from head to toe. Another linguistic lesson. Lafi khusr, or is it lafi al khusr? It's lafi khusr. It's mentioned as a nakira. That's nakira. Lafi khusr instead of lafi al khusr. There's two reasons for this. Khusr as a nakira over al khusr. It comes to show, number one, how big of a loss. That's why it's mentioned as a nakira, lafi khusr instead of lafi al khusr. Arabic people use nakira without al to show something that is mighty and devastating and how big it is. So this is to show how big of a loss it is. Another linguistic lesson is Allah used fi in instead of ala on. Ala means on. In another verse, when Allah talks about guidance, He says, أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَى هُدًى. They are on guidance. He didn't say fi over there. Why did He use fi instead of ala here, because he's fully surrounded deeply with loss. He's not on a loss, which may appear, he's not ala on a loss, which may appear to indicate a slightly lesser degree of a loss. He used fi to indicate how big of a loss it is. He is in total loss. He's not near or close to a loss. He is encircled in a loss. All those unique, detailed linguistic lessons show how big of a loss this is we're talking about over here. The loss here is not a transaction or two. It's not a season or two. It's not a semester or two. It's not a quiz. It's not a test. It's not a business deal. This loss here is loss of a capital. It's loss of profits, and it's complete debt. Major loss. It's also not a temporary loss. It's an everlasting loss. If one is in hell, he's doomed. Nas'alullah al-afiyah. If he's in heaven, then he may have not gotten the highest strength that he should have gotten. It's a loss right there too. Let me give you a practical example as it pertains to this surah. A winner and someone who lost his profits. First one is a winner, then one who lost his profit, and then the third one is one who lost his capital, his profit, and he is in debt. You return from work or school. And since we said Al Asr may mean the time at the end of the day when someone begins to think about what he did during that day, you return at night, you visit relatives, you teach your kids Quran, you play with them, you make salah, fard or nafil, you may have relationship with your wife, maybe you review Quran, maybe go online, listen to a lecture, maybe listen to Quran, maybe go out working out with the right intention, maybe even sleeping, taking a nap with the right intention. If you intended and you said, I want to get a few minutes of sleep so I can re-energize after this long day, and so I can wake up for qiyam. It'll help me get up for qiyam. And because there's a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, you get some qaylula during the day, sleep, nap at the day, so it'll help you wake up at night. So that is a winner. He used his time to his advantage. That's number one. Number two is someone who came back from a bad day. You usually come back from work or school upset or thinking or worried, and you're brainstorming and you're thinking, sitting there just merely thinking about what happened. Anything you do idle where you're not gaining deeds, you're at a loss. You lost profit. You may have not gotten sins. We're not saying you got sins for sitting there and thinking and drooling over what happened. But that same time is a loss because you didn't take advantage of that time. What's the surah start with? Al Asr. Time. Any businessman will tell you money you have, you stack away, that's not invested is money lost. Money not invested is money lost. Take it and say, time not invested for your akhirah is time lost. It's so simple to get ajr. In fact, with the right intention, there's nearly nothing you can't get ajr on. You go work out with the right intention, ajr. You sleep and take a nap with the right intention, ajr. You play with your kids, ajr. Now the third scenario is one that will return from work, use that time to hang out with his friends. He uses that time to hang out with his friend. Now what's a common epidemic today in settings? Backbiting, gossip, watching that which is prohibited, maybe listening to the instruments of the shaitan, sitting with your friends, or going on the net and typing away in the honor of those dead and alive. You see and hear of rogues who don't know if they'll wake up Muslim or otherwise, performing dissection and anatomy with their tongues on the honor of people whose destiny is now with Allah. There are those There's people who are done deal. Allah's dealing with them. Allah is dealing with them. They are now with Allah. Allah's dealing with them. Then you got people who perform dissection on those whose souls are possibly inside green birds tending to the rivers of paradise and eating from the fruits of Jannah and returning to hang on the throne of Allah. All that while some rog is sitting dissecting them with his tongue, does not know he himself whether he will wake up as a Muslim or a munafiq. If Allah prohibited backbiting amongst two people for moments, if two people for just a few moments backbite, it's considered a major sin. That's backbiting and that's a major sin. If it's only for moments and just amongst two people, it's a major sin when it's among two. In the reality, if you think about it, when two people talk about someone, each party departs and possibly forgets that which they said and go about their way. That's major sin and backbiting, even if they forgot about it on the spot. And that's among the major sins. Now imagine a sin like that when it's among a group. How big of a sin it is when it's in a group. Now take it further. Imagine the sin when it's put on a social media for the world to see, not for this time period, but for generations to come and possibly until the judgment day. Wallahi, one who truly believes in the akhirah and the punishment of the grave and lets that register in his mind, he would never go to that extreme. One will lie in his grave with torment, seizing him from every angle for hundreds of years, possibly thousands of years, until the trumpet is blown in for words he posted on the net. He thought they were nothing, but to Allah they were very severe. I say, amongst the most dangerous sins after shirk are the sins that pertain to the rights of others. Be careful in your time. That's why we're mentioning this, because this is stuff that happens during your time. We deal with the Ghafurun Rahim. When you read about the mercy of Allah and the Shafa'ah, you get ecstatic in hope. There is a type of sin that is a double-edged sword. And that's the sins that transgress upon others, like killing, like backbiting, like taking the properties of others, like slander of others. You can raise your hands in 2 seconds and ask Allah for forgiveness. You're dealing with a Ghafur Rahim. But there's another right, double-edged sword. There's another right pertaining to the human who's going to come and request it from you when you stand before Allah. When people pass over the Sirat, obstacle after obstacle, terror after terror. Allah called it زلزلة الساعة شيء عظيم. The wait for the judgment day is terror. The questioning before Allah is terror. The mizan is terror. Getting the books, walking on the sirat. Now, finally, you made it through all that and you're on the sirat, you're crossing a sirat, and there are people who are making it to the front yard of Jannah. In Sahih Bukhari, إذا خلص المؤمنون من النار حبسوا بقنطرة بين الجنة والنار فيتقاضون مظالم كانت بينهم في الدنيا حتى إذا نقوا وهذبوا أذن الله لهم حتى إذا نقوا وهذبوا أذن لهم بدخول الجنة. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu in hadith in Sahih Bukhari said, when the believers cross over hellfire, over the Sirat, they're stopped at a bridge called Al-Qantara, an arc bridge called Al-Qantara, before they get into paradise. What's that bridge for? They will be given retribution for injustices between them until they're fully purified. Then after they're purified from rights amongst each other, then they'll be told, you can enter Jannah. Qantara may be the edge, the last portion of a sirat, but I believe from what I read, I believe it's actually another bridge, a second smaller bridge after a sirat that's like a detour for believers of this ummah who have rights amongst each other before they get to step on the front yard of Jannah. Whoever contemplates and fully realizes the akhirah, and sit, when you think about it, as it's happening before you, what I just told you, sit and imagine it before you. You could never commit a sin like this. Can you imagine the excitement? You pass all through all those phases, one after the other. You just finished passing the claws that take you, kalalib, that take you and pull you from the sirat onto Jahannam. You just passed that phase. Just as you're about to put your foot in the front yard of Jannah, one group goes forward to the front yard of Jannah joys, and another group goes to Al-Qantara to settle the disputes they had between Muslims and get purified before they're allowed to enter the front yard of Jannah. Is anyone worth stopping you for a millisecond from putting your feet on the front yards of Jannah? Imagine with me. Ask you by Allah to imagine with me that you're on the Qantara. Jannah is an eyesight away. You can see Jannah from the Qantara. You get in sins of someone you despise so much that you spoke about him and slandered him. Can you feel the agony you're going to be going through? Because still at this point, after this point, Allah's going to remove all heart feelings. وَنَزَعْنَا مَا فِي صُدُورٍ مِّنْ غِلٍّ. But at this point, you're going to feel the pain of it. Can you feel the agony of being imprisoned on the Qantara, watching your level in Jannah from Firdaus drop down and down and down and down, at an eyesight away from you? Can you imagine the agony of seeing people in the front yard of Jannah? Some people possibly crowded about Ibrahim alayhi salam. Some people going to Nuh alayhi salam to meet with him. Some people going with Aisha to meet the wife of the Prophet sallallahu. Some going to meet Khalid ibn al-Walid and Abu Ubaidah, smiling and joyous. They made it to the front yard of heaven, and you're there on the Qantara getting your ranks stripped down, one after the other, for something you said about a believer, or something that you took away from the rights of a believer. The one you despise so much, is he worth the most valuable asset that you have? Your ranks in Jannah? If indeed you want to backbite, then slander your mom and your dad, or your sheikh, or someone you really love. Because if you get stopped on the Qantara, it'll be your mom and your dad getting their ranks higher while yours get slower. Why did the Prophet ﷺ call someone who transgresses on another's rights bankrupt? Ask people who know finance. If someone has no wealth, zero, do you call him bankrupt? No, you don't call him bankrupt. Someone you refer to as bankrupt is not someone who never had nothing. It's someone who has a lot and then lost it. Those who slander, backbite, transgress on the honor and the rights of others, they have deeds, lots of deeds. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, like Jibal Tuhama, huge mountains of deeds. But they become bankrupt, they lose it all. They hit someone, he takes some ajr. They slander, that person gets some ajr. You really get amazed at how loose some tongues are and how released some jaws are when it comes to the honor of their brothers. Because they don't really comprehend these. The akhirah in them is not really deep in their hearts. Basically, we gave scenarios right now of how one took advantage of the hour and became a winner. The middle one was a loser, because even though he didn't commit sins, he didn't gain no ajr, that's considered a loss. Time not invested in the akhirah is a loss. And the final scenario we took is not only one who didn't gain ajr, but he gained sins and he became a bigger loser or has a bigger loss, and he didn't spend his time positive or neutral, he actually spent it to accumulate sins. What makes one at a deep loss, lafi khusr, is that he brought this onto himself with his own actions. No one forced him. No one forced him. No one put a gun to his head and told him. It was his choice. And it was his choice through his body parts, and those will be testifying against him on the judgment day. So the first reason for khusr instead of al-khusr is to show how big of a loss it is. That's why it's mentioned in a nakira. The second reason for khusr over al-khusr in mentioned in nakra is tanwi'. That the losses are level. Losses are levels. Look in the Quran. There's many verses. الذين خسروا أنفسهم وأهليهم يوم القيامة. قل هل ننبئكم بالأخسرين وهم في الآخرة هم الأخسرون. So the Quran gives levels of those at loss. You got a khasir and you got a akhsar, meaning they're levels. Not all losers are on the same level. So here it's one khusr completely encircled with loss. That's the second reason for the linguistic use of a nakira khusr instead of al khusr.